My guest is Mark O'Connor. The debate at the moment is of population is sadly caught up in this minor point about illegal immigrants or boat people or boat arrivals.
Very confused on that, isn't it?
It is, and it does cloud the issue, and it gets all the airtime. But it looks like it's actually the smallest fringe issue of the whole population argument.
It's a total fringe issue, but that very clever politician John Howard realised that he could keep people confused about this. He doubled immigration in his own time, and every time he pushed immigration up, he prevented there being any outcry by monstering some tiny group of asylum seekers, knowing that that would get far more press and it would send the left into an absolute frenzy of fury, in the course of which they would accuse him of being anti-immigration, which was just what he loved, because usually when a politician, changes the status quo, they immediately get attacked by the people they're moving against. But instead he was being attacked for not being sufficiently pro-immigration. So he'd say, beauty, I can push immigration still higher next year.
So he would be attacked for being anti-immigration, and then he could roll out figures showing he'd increased immigration levels.
Oh, he never rolled the figures out. He kept that secret. His aim was to be thought anti-immigration so that he could keep on pushing immigration ever higher and never be criticised for it. And, of course, he so confused people on the left and well-meaning people that they felt they couldn't oppose high immigration because that would be somehow being opposed to refugees, which it isn't.
So do I assume then that you actually would like to see a reduction in the number of legal immigrants that fly in on passenger jets and get lawful access to Australia?
Well, it's bizarrely high. As I said, our population growth is 6 to 8 times the average for an advanced country. And as most of that's coming from immigration, the immigration rate is even more bizarrely high relative to almost any other country you name. And we don't need it. I mean, all this rhetoric that again, you're getting from the big end of town that they need skilled workers, what that means is they don't want to pay to train ordinary Australians. I know that in Melbourne, for instance, the statistic is that there are 6 times as many job seekers as jobs, and I suspect it wouldn't be that different in Brisbane. But of course, if you want, say, to have a teenager go out to a mine site and drive a 100-ton truck, you might have to pay them for 4 weeks training, and it's cheaper to get someone who's just flown into the country, who's already done that sort of work. So these people are not prepared to pay the market price for labour, which is a bit paradoxical, granted how they like to lecture everyone else on market forces.
Now, we heard that story today, actually, Mark O'Connor, on ABC Radio News this afternoon and this evening, that industry is concerned that there's a skill shortage in Australia, yet your observation is that there's 6 times as many job seekers as there are jobs.
That's certainly the case. I mean, you'll always get... it's a point of view. If you're an employer, you can never get enough sober people prepared to work for little and do a wonderful job. And conversely, if you're a worker, you can never find enough wonderful bosses, who'll pay you a great amount to do very little. And sensible governments don't get involved in that sort of argy-bargy. They discount a lot of that rhetoric. But when you're getting very large campaign donations coming in from the big end of town, as both major parties are, because that's how we fund our political parties, of course they have to listen very respectfully to this sort of stuff, even if they know that it's nonsense.
How do you achieve the right balance then? I mean, first of all, if the government ignores the Australian Institute of Science's 94 report and is so heavily influenced by think tanks and vested interests, and I note that Julia Gillard made her speech at the Lowy Institute, which is one of the high-end think tanks in Australia.
Yep. Certainly
cashed up. How do you achieve a balance of getting the right population level?
Well, that's 2 questions. What do you actually do, and how do you get that influence on the politicians? And as you say, they're heavily influenced by donations because we do not fund our politicians. It's been pointed out that just $3 per person per year would enable us to ban campaign donations and give us the kind of honest system that the Canadians are moving towards.
Well, they do get $2 or whatever it is per vote when they get elected, if they get over the 4% threshold in Australia.
They do, but what you actually have to do is to ban the other source of money, because it's always competitive. If your opposition is getting twice as much money to advertise with, then you've got to compete with them, which means you've got to go after the donations. And that's what we've got to cut out. We've got to stop donations and simply fund parties out of the public purse. And the question of what you do is you cut back on skilled immigration, which basically we don't need.
So there's the whole 457 visa argument, just shut it down.
Largely shut it. Oh, I don't think we ever needed those visas. It was, again, the thing is that when business folk get together, Usually they compete with each other, like cat and dog. But when they come together at a conference to work out what they can, communally ask of government, it's always popular to ask for more cheap workers to be brought in on demand when and as they want them, so that they'll never have to set up apprenticeships or train their own people. And I don't think that's a legitimate request, because it leaves Australians out of work. And in particular, teenagers are always in that position where they can't get a job because they lack work experience, and can't get work experience because they lack a job. Their best friend is a slight scarcity of labour, which makes industry, happy to say, we will take you and train you for 4 weeks and even pay you a wage while you do it, which is not a great cost to industry or really at all. And it saves an enormous cost to the public purse when someone stays out of work, perhaps for a lifetime, as a result of never having got into the workforce.
Mark O'Connor, author of Overpopulating Australia.